Memoir of a Snail. If you look at the Oscar nominations for Best Animated Feature this year, always the two best categories are animated feature and foreign language feature. So this year it's Flow, which I know you love, Inside Out 2, which I know all the listeners love, Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul. You can still listen to our interview with the makers of that. That's on the podcast, the live show that we did. Wild Robot and Memoir of a Snail. So Memoir of a Snail is out this week. Really worth checking out. An Australian stop-motion tragicomedy from writer-director Adam Elliott. First thing to say, it is not about a snail. The second thing to say is that it's an animated feature, but in the same way that Guillermo del Toro said, animation is not a genre, and also animation is not just for kids. This is not a film for kids. It's rated 15 by the BBFC for strong sex references, nudity, and domestic abuse, none of which captures the tone of the film, but does tell you it's not, we have the little ones in tow, let's go and have a look. So Sarah Snook is the voice of Grace, who is a young girl growing up in 70s Melbourne. She lives with her brother Gilbert, who's voiced by Cody Smith-McPhee, who loves matches, and her French father, who was a former juggler, but is now a paraplegic alcoholic. Grace was born with a cleft lip, and her mother died in childbirth. Hence, her brother is very, very protective. And she finds comfort in collecting snails, to one of whom she narrates her life story. And when Percy dies, she and her brother are taken into care and are separated. She gets sent to Canberra, where she's adopted by these people who seem quite nice, but they're swingers. So they're out swinging all the time. So she's pretty much neglected. Meanwhile, her brother gets sent to Perth, where he's basically looked after by this fanatical religious cult who talk in tongues and essentially subject him to the most horrible abuses for being an evil kid. They are crucially both alone. Here's a clip.
I think over time, the loss of my family had somehow frozen me. I thought it was safer to just live in a pretend world. Oh, Dad would have been disappointed I'd resorted to trashy novels. It was now just me, some sexy pirates, and a few frisky guinea pigs who mocked my virginity. The stereotype was now complete, Sylvia. I'd become an unloved recluse.
Now, you can tell from that clip sort of the tone of the film, which is that it's, as I said, whimsical, tragicomic. The voice cast includes Jackie Weaver, who is this now elderly former table dancer, Pinky, who takes Grace under her wing. And then the rest of the story is basically Grace's adolescence and her adult life. Eric Bana is in there as a magistrate. Tony Armstrong is Ken, to who Grace is briefly married. Nick Cave is Bill Clark, the second husband. Now, because of the fact that it's adult subject matter, the film has drawn some comparisons with Anomalisa, which you remember was the film in which the makers came on the show, and that was the whole thing about
how can I ever forget?
How can we ever forget that riveting interview? Here's the thing: I think this has less in common with Anomalisa than it does with My Life as a Courgette. Although My Life as a Courgette was a PG-rated film, but in terms of its sensibility, it's much closer to this. I mean, the only thing I think this does have in common with Anomalisa is that it's dealing with, grown-up issues of, sex and death and that sort of thing. But I actually don't think there is a comparison between them beyond that. The stop motion is beautifully done. I mean, I love stop motion anyway. There's something incredibly tactile about it. This deals very frankly with a number of, adult subjects. Alzheimer's is addressed, but it has that same piercing, truthful honesty that My Life as a Courgette had. And I, of course, Celine Sciamma was one of the writers on that film. I thought it was just brilliantly done. At times this is funny, particularly in the deadpan narration is very funny, but it's also extremely poignant. At times it's heartbreaking. And I thought it was a wonderful film. I thought it was beautifully animated. I thought the voice cast did a great job. I thought it was properly affecting. And I went into it I knew nothing at all other than the name, Memoir of a Snail. So I did go in thinking it's about a snail. And it just felt like a really, really smart way of telling a story about somebody's personal, internal life, and done through the genius of stop motion, which continues to thrive. I mean, the fact that there's this, and then there's Vengeance Most Foul, and, Guillermo's Pinocchio recently. I think it is a really wonderful piece of work, and I'm thrilled to see that it's up for an Oscar and it's in cinemas. Go see it. 15 certificate, not for kids.
We have a very good email later on about casting and voiceover and the voice cast for an animation, which we'll get to. Oscar in Cardiff, Mark and Simon. The film Memoir of a Snail was equal parts hilarious and depressing in the best way, and is easily Adam's most adult film yet, particularly for a pivotal scene, which is the first time claymation has disturbed me since Mad God. If you've seen it, you will know which. Yeah. While I wasn't as big on the choice to have the main character narrate the story compared to the separate narrators present in his previous works, I still love the film and teared up at the end, which is rare for me. In my screening, there was a Q&A with director Adam Elliott. He was lovely and honest with my favourite thing he told us about being how an accident on set left one of the animators with a severed fingertip, and how they then decided to put that fingertip in various background shots of the movie. When it releases at home, I shall now have to look for the finger. Okay. I got a signed poster and a photo with Adam himself, where for some reason it looks like he's excited to see me instead of the other way round. It's great to see my favourite filmmaker having developed a cult fan base, and I love getting to meet the shining example of how great and mature adult animation can be.
If you want to check out the earlier stuff, I mean, the best known one is Mary and Max, which we reviewed. I mean, that was 2009, but that created quite a stir when that came out. They got an awful lot of acclaim. So, and that's available on streaming services.